The trash hit the floor at 8:42 in the morning and everyone laughed. Not quiet laughter, not the embarrassed kind people try to swallow. Open laughter, the kind that echoes off marble and glass, the kind that only happens when a group of people has decided together that someone doesn't count. The woman in the blue uniform stood in the middle of the lobby holding her mop, staring down at the crumpled papers and coffee cups scattered across the floor she had just finished cleaning. The woman who dumped the trash can, tall, blonde, tailored navy suit, smiled as she set the empty bin down beside her heels. "Oops," she said. "Looks like you missed a spot." Nobody in that lobby knew that the janitor had a phone in her front pocket, recording everything. Nobody knew that in 24 hours, every person laughing in that room would be cleaning out their desks. Her name was Renata. She was 41 years old, and for the past 19 days she had been pushing a mop through the sixth largest financial consulting firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. She arrived at 6:15 every morning. She wore the same blue uniform, the same worn sneakers, the same quiet expression. She said good morning to everyone she passed. Almost nobody said it back. What none of them knew, not the executives on the 8th floor, not the analysts who left protein shake spills on the conference tables, not the woman in the navy suit whose name was Vanessa Cole, director of client services, was that Renata reported directly to one person and one person only: Marcus Hale, founder, chairman, the man whose name was etched into the glass above the reception desk they walked past every single day without looking up. Marcus Hale was 73 years old and he was dying, not in the dramatic way, in the slow, quiet, doctors giving you timelines way, 18 months, maybe 24, and he had one decision left to make, the biggest one of his life: who would inherit control of the firm he had spent 40 years building. The board had candidates. The candidates had resumes. The resumes were flawless, and Marcus Hale did not trust a single page of any of them. Because Marcus had learned something a long time ago, back when he was a kid bussing tables in a diner outside Asheville. He learned that you cannot know who a person is by watching how they treat their boss. You can only know who they are by watching how they treat someone who can do nothing for them, someone they believe is beneath them, someone holding a mop. So he made a phone call to the one person he trusted more than anyone alive. Renata Alves had worked for Marcus for 16 years. She had started as his executive assistant, become his chief of staff, and eventually his head of internal operations, a title that appeared on no org chart and meant in practice that she was his eyes. She had a law degree she rarely mentioned. She had sat in rooms with senators and CEOs, and when Marcus explained what he needed, she didn't hesitate. 60 days, he told her. I need to know who they really are, all of them. Especially the ones the board loves. Give me 30, she said. The firm hired contract cleaners through an outside agency, which made the placement simple. No HR trail, no background check that led anywhere. On her first morning, Renata clocked in with a laminated badge that said her name was Rosa, and she disappeared. That was the strange thing she noticed within the first hour: how completely a uniform can erase a person. She had walked these same hallways 2 years earlier in a charcoal suit for a board retreat, and people had held elevators for her, laughed at her jokes, remembered her coffee order. Now those same people looked through her like she was a window. She kept a notebook, not on paper in her head at first, then typed into an encrypted file every night at her kitchen table. Names, dates, quotes, who said what when they thought no one important was listening. And by day 19, that file had grown into something Marcus Hale had not expected and did not want: a portrait of a company rotting from the middle. And at the center of the rot, appearing in that file more than any other name, was the woman in the navy suit. Vanessa Cole, the board's favorite, the presumed heir, the one who had just dumped a trash can onto a freshly mopped floor to the sound of applause. Renata bent down, picked up a coffee cup, and smiled to herself. 19 days of evidence. One more meeting to go. To understand how Vanessa Cole became the kind of person who dumps garbage at a cleaner's feet in front of an audience, you had to understand how the 8th floor worked. The 8th floor was where the firm kept its future. Corner offices, glass walls, a private espresso machine that cost more than a used car. The people who worked there called it the altitude, and they said it the way other people say the name of a country club. Vanessa had clawed her way up to the altitude in 9 years, faster than anyone in the firm's history, and she had done it with a formula that worked almost everywhere in corporate America. Be brilliant upward, be brutal downward, and make sure the people who matter only ever see the first half. To the board, Vanessa was electric. She remembered birthdays. She sent handwritten notes. She could take a room of skeptical investors and have them eating out of her hand in 40 minutes. Marcus Hale had watched her present twice and come away impressed both times. On paper and in every room where power sat, Vanessa Cole was the obvious successor. But Renata did not work in those rooms. Renata worked in the hallways, the break rooms, the stairwells, the spaces between. And in those spaces, Vanessa was someone else entirely. On day 4, Renata had been wiping down the glass wall of a conference room when Vanessa held a meeting with 3 junior analysts inside. One of them, a young man named Tio, barely 24, had found an error in a client model, an error that traced back to Vanessa's own numbers. He raised it carefully, respectfully, the way you hold out a hand to a dog you're not sure won't bite. Vanessa listened with a perfectly still face. Then she thanked him. The meeting ended. And 40 minutes later, Renata was emptying a trash bin 10 feet from Vanessa's office door when she heard her on the phone with a staffing coordinator, calm as a weather report, asking to have Tio rotated off the account for fit issues. Fit issues. Renata typed that phrase into her file that night and stared at it for a long time. On day 9, it was the intern. A young woman named Priya who had driven 40 minutes in the rain to deliver printed binders for a client meeting because Vanessa insisted on paper. Priya arrived soaked, 5 minutes late, holding the binders wrapped in her own jacket to keep them dry. Vanessa took the binders, inspected a water spot on one corner and said, in front of the whole conference room, "Next time send someone competent." Then she smiled, the smile that boards loved, and started the meeting. Priya stood in the hallway afterward blinking at the ceiling, doing the thing people do when they refuse to cry at work. Renata, pushing her cart past, quietly handed her a stack of paper towels and said, "The rain wasn't your fault." Priya looked at her, surprised the janitor had spoken at all, and whispered, "Thank you." That was the other pattern Renata was documenting, the one nobody had asked for, the kindness. Because there was some, and it mattered, and it came almost entirely from the bottom of the building. There was Miguel at the loading dock, who kept a drawer of granola bars for the delivery drivers who skipped lunch. There was Dorothy, the 60-year-old receptionist, who knew every employee's name, every single one, including the cleaning crew, and had covered for a young father in accounting when he slipped out early for his daughter's recital. And there was Sam, the night security guard who walked the parking garage with any woman leaving after dark, no matter how junior, no matter how long it took. None of those names appeared on any succession shortlist. All of them appeared in Renata's file, under a heading she had labeled simply, "Keep." But it was the morning of day 19, the trash can morning, that changed the timeline. Because what Vanessa did in that lobby wasn't impulsive. Renata had heard it being planned. The day before, in the 8th floor kitchen, one of Vanessa's inner circle had complained that the new cleaning lady had asked him to lift his feet so she could mop. He said it like an outrage. And Vanessa, stirring her coffee, had said 6 words Renata would remember for the rest of her life. Someone should remind her what she is. The lobby the next morning was the reminder. Public, deliberate, performed for an audience. What Vanessa didn't know was that the audience included Marcus Hale's eyes. And that night, for the first time in 19 days, Renata called him directly. Marcus Hale answered on the second ring. He was sitting in the study of his house on Lake Norman, a blanket over his knees he would have been embarrassed for anyone at the firm to see, a glass of water where a glass of scotch used to be. When he saw Renata's name on the screen, he knew something had shifted. Their arrangement was strict. Encrypted written reports every Sunday night, no calls unless something couldn't wait. It was Thursday. "Tell me," he said. Renata told him. She started with the trash can because that was the headline, but she didn't stop there. She walked him through 19 days, name by name, incident by incident. Tio and the fit issues. Priya and the binders, the petty cash fund on the fifth floor that a supervisor had been quietly skimming. The two mid-level managers who padded their expense reports in ways so casual it was clearly habit. The department head who deleted his junior analyst's name from a client deliverable and presented the work as his own. Renata had watched him do it, reflected in the window glass, while she vacuumed the hallway behind him. Marcus listened without interrupting. That was one of the things she had always respected about him. Most powerful men listen the way people wait at a red light, idling, ready to move the second there's a gap. Marcus listened like the information might change him, and this information did. When she finished, there was a long silence on the line. Then he said quietly, "I built that." "You built the company," Renata said. "You didn't build them." "Same thing. Culture is the founder's shadow. If the middle of my building is rotten, it's because somewhere along the way I rewarded rot." He exhaled slowly. "The board wants Vanessa announced at the quarterly meeting. That's in 6 weeks. They think I'm being sentimental, dragging my feet." "You are dragging your feet. I was waiting on you." Renata looked down at the encrypted file open on her laptop, 41 pages now, and told him the truth. "Marcus, this isn't a case of one bad hire. Vanessa is the worst of it, but she's not an accident. She's a product. Your promotion system selects for people who perform for the people above them. It's been doing it for years. If you fire her and change nothing else, the system will just grow another one. So what do you want? 11 more days. Let me finish the month. There's one thing I still don't have." She paused. "Vanessa's client files, the ones she keeps off the shared drive." Dorothy at reception mentioned that Vanessa has couriers deliver documents directly to her office, never through the mailroom. "That's not normal. I want to know why." Marcus was quiet again. Then, "You think it's worse than cruelty?" "I think cruelty is rarely a person's only vice. It's usually just the one they don't bother to hide." He gave her the 11 days. What Renata did not tell Marcus, because it wasn't relevant to the mission, and because she wasn't sure she had the words for it yet, was what the trash can had actually felt like. She had prepared herself for invisibility. She had not prepared herself for the laughter. Standing in that lobby with garbage at her feet, she had learned something no briefing could have taught her, that being unseen is painful, but being seen and dismissed is worse. The people who laughed weren't monsters. That was the terrifying part. They were ordinary professionals with mortgages and gym memberships and children they loved, and they had laughed because laughing was easier than objecting, and because somewhere in the building's bloodstream was the understanding that people in blue uniforms exist to absorb things. That night, she added a new section to the file. Not names this time. Bystanders. The ones who laughed. The ones who looked away. And a much shorter list, 3 names of people who hadn't. Because there had been 3. A young woman from legal who stopped mid-stride, visibly appalled, and mouthed, "I'm so sorry," before a colleague pulled her along. An older man from IT who came back 5 minutes later with a broom from the supply closet and helped without saying a word. And Dorothy at reception, who had stood up from her desk, 60 years old, arthritis in both knees, and crossed the entire lobby to help pick up coffee cups off the floor while the laughter died awkwardly around her. 3 people out of 30. Renata saved the file, closed the laptop, and set her alarm for 5:20. 11 days, and the couriers came on Tuesdays. Tuesday came wrapped in rain, the kind of gray Carolina drizzle that makes a glass building feel like the inside of a bottle. Renata clocked in at 6:15, pushed her cart through the lobby, and began the slowest, most deliberate day of cleaning in the history of the profession. The courier arrived at 10:40. She knew because she was polishing the elevator doors on the 8th floor when he stepped out of them. A wiry man in a rain jacket with no company logo, carrying a padded envelope with no shipping label. He walked past reception without signing anything, went straight to Vanessa's office and handed the envelope to her personally. Vanessa closed the door. The whole exchange took 9 seconds, and it was 9 seconds of pure wrongness. Firms like this one logged everything. Packages went through the mailroom, got scanned, stamped, recorded. This envelope had entered the building the way a secret does. Renata could not open that door, and she wouldn't have. There were lines. Marcus had drawn them himself on the first phone call. Observe everything, touch nothing, break no law. Whatever was in the envelope would have to reveal itself another way. It revealed itself at 6:50 that evening through the oldest vulnerability in corporate America, the recycling bin. Vanessa left at 6:30, heels echoing down the empty corridor, and Renata began her scheduled cleaning of the 8th floor, a task that was, by every rule of her cover job, entirely legitimate. She emptied waste baskets, she wiped desks, and in the paper recycling bin beside Vanessa's desk, folded in half beneath a dead sticky note and an empty sweetener packet, was a single sheet that had been fed through a shredder that jammed. Half the page was ribbon. The other half was intact, and Renata, whose job description that month included handling exactly this kind of paper, looked at it the way she looked at everything. It was a fee schedule. Not the firm's letterhead, a vendor's. Meridian Data Partners, a name Renata had never seen on any approved supplier list. And in the intact half, 3 lines survived. A client account number she recognized as belonging to one of the firm's largest portfolios, a consulting referral fee of $30,000, and a handwritten note in the margin, in handwriting she had seen on 8th floor birthday cards. Per our arrangement, Renata stood alone in the office with her heart doing something unprofessional. She did not take the paper. She photographed it where it lay, with the bin's edge visible in the frame time-stamped, then let it fall back exactly as it had been and finished cleaning the floor. At her kitchen table that night, it took her 4 hours to assemble the shape of it. Meridian Data Partners was 3 years old, registered in Delaware, with a website that was 1 page of stock photography. Its listed managing partner was a name that meant nothing, until Renata cross-referenced it against the public record and found a wedding announcement from 11 years ago. The managing partner of Meridian was Vanessa Cole's brother-in-law. The shape became a picture. Vanessa was steering client work, data services, research contracts, analytics consulting, to a shell company owned by her own family, taking referral fees off the top. The clients paid inflated invoices. The firm's name gave the invoices legitimacy, and every dollar of it flowed around the firm's compliance systems like water around a stone, because the person who would normally flag irregular vendor relationships in client services was the director of client services. It was not just cruelty anymore. It was theft. Quiet, patient, well-dressed theft, conducted by the woman the board wanted to hand the entire company to in 6 weeks. Renata typed until 2 a.m., then stopped, because there was a problem, and the problem kept her staring at the ceiling long after she'd gone to bed. A photograph of a half-shredded page in a recycling bin was a thread, not a rope. Vanessa was smart. Confronted, she would call it a forgery, a misunderstanding, a disgruntled contractor's fantasy, and a janitor's word against the heir apparent would last about 9 minutes in a boardroom. If they moved too early, Vanessa would survive it. Worse, she'd know she was being watched, and every trace of Meridian would evaporate by the weekend. They needed the arrangement to document itself. They needed invoices, approvals, the paper trail only the firm's own systems could produce, pulled by someone with the authority to pull them, in a way no lawyer could ever challenge. They needed Marcus. And Marcus, when she called him at 6 the next morning, listened to all of it in silence, and then said the 6 words she had been both hopping for and dreading. "I'm coming into the building. Friday." Marcus Hale had not set foot in his own building in 7 months. The official story was that the chairman was focusing on strategic advisory work from home, which was the kind of sentence companies print when the truth is too human to publish. The truth was chemotherapy, and the way it had carved him down from a broad-shouldered mountain of a man into someone who now had to plan his days around his energy like a phone rationing its battery. But on Friday morning at 9:15, a silver Mercedes pulled into the executive garage, and Marcus Hale walked into the lobby of the firm he built, and the building changed pressure like a plane door had opened. Renata watched it happen from behind her cart, 40 feet away, and it was a masterclass in what proximity to power does to people. Dorothy at reception lit up with what looked like genuine joy. She had known Marcus 30 years. The security guard straightened. And on the floors above, word traveled at the speed of instant message, so that by the time Marcus stepped off the elevator at the altitude, the 8th floor had rearranged itself into a diorama of productivity. Jackets on. Postures corrected. Someone had thrown away the birthday cake box that had been sitting in the kitchen for 3 days. Vanessa Cole reached him before he was 10 steps out of the elevator. Renata, mopping the corridor by the glass conference room with the patience of a woman prepared to mop it all day, watched Vanessa perform. And it was a performance worth studying because it was flawless. The warmth looked warm. The concern for his health looked concerned, calibrated perfectly enough to show care, not enough to remind him he was dying. She laughed at the right moments and touched his forearm once, briefly, like punctuation. This was the Vanessa the board saw. If Renata had not spent 22 days watching the other one, she might have believed in this one too. "You look strong, Marcus," Vanessa said. "The place hasn't been the same." "I'm sure it's been in good hands," Marcus said, and only someone who had known him 16 years would have heard the temperature of that sentence. The official reason for his visit was boring by design. The chairman, ahead of the succession announcement, wanted a routine operational review, a look at the books, vendor relationships, client billing, the housekeeping of a company preparing to change hands. It was the kind of request no one could object to and no one could refuse. By 10:30, Marcus was installed in his old corner office with the firm's head of internal audit, a meticulous, gray-haired woman named Carol Jiang, who had been personally hired by Marcus 19 years ago, and who owed nothing to anyone on the 8th floor. What no one in the building understood was that the review's scope had been written the night before, at Marcus's kitchen table, from notes provided by a janitor. Carol was told to pull 3 years of vendor payments across client services. She was told to flag any supplier missing from the approved list. She was not told why, and she did not ask, but 40 minutes in, when the name Meridian Data Partners surfaced for the first time, attached to a $30,000 invoice approved by V. Cole with no competitive bid on file, Carol Jiang took off her glasses, cleaned them slowly, and put them back on. By 2 p.m. she had found 11 more. Renata learned this at 4:40 in the strangest 60 seconds of the entire operation. She was cleaning the executive floor's small kitchen when Marcus walked in alone to refill his water glass, a thing he could have asked anyone to do, which meant he had done it on purpose. They stood side by side at the counter, the chairman and the cleaner, invisible to the hallway. 12 invoices, he said quietly to the faucet. 3 years, little over $400,000. He filled the glass. Carol will have the full picture by Monday. And Vanessa suspects nothing. She spent the morning showing me revenue slides. He paused and something moved across his face that was older than anger. She's very good, Renata, that's what I can't get past. All that talent, and this is what she built with it. He turned to leave, then stopped at the door without looking back. The trash can, he said. That was her too. Yes. Marcus nodded slowly once, and Renata watched the last of his hesitation die. Monday, he said. Keep your uniform on until then. I want her looking at you when she finds out who you are. The weekend should have been quiet. It wasn't, because Vanessa Cole had survived 9 years in that building by developing the instincts of a smoke detector, and sometime on Saturday afternoon she smelled something. It wasn't the audit itself. Carol Jiang worked with the discretion of a locksmith, and the vendor files had been pulled through channels Vanessa couldn't see. It was smaller than that, the way it always is. It was the IT ticket. Carol had requested archived email records for 3 client accounts on Friday evening, and the routine system notification, an automated courtesy no one had thought to suppress, landed in the inbox of the department head whose emails were being pulled. That department head, a nervous man named Gerald who had approved 2 of the Meridian invoices without reading them, called Vanessa on Saturday at 2:15 in the afternoon. Renata knew none of this yet. She spent her Saturday at her sister's house in Matthews, eating rice and beans with her nieces and saying nothing about work, because 16 years beside Marcus Hale had taught her how to carry things without letting them show on her face. But Vanessa spent her Saturday in her home office with the blinds closed, working through the problem like the brilliant analyst she had always been. An operational review before succession, normal. The chairman personally in the building, plausible. Internal audit pulling vendor files and archived emails on a Friday night, not normal. Not normal at all. She made 2 phone calls. The first was to her brother-in-law, and it was short, and by Sunday morning the Meridian Data Partners website no longer existed. The second call was longer, to Gerald, and it was reassuring in the practiced way that people reassure someone they are already planning to feed to the wolves. "It's routine," she told him. "But if anyone asks, all vendor decisions went through committee. We decided together. You remember it that way, don't you, Gerald?" Gerald, sweating in his kitchen, said he remembered it that way. What Vanessa could not do, and this was the wall she paced against all weekend, was figure out the source. Audits don't start themselves. Someone had pointed Carol Jiang at client services, and Vanessa ran the list of suspects the way she ran every list, methodically, coldly, by motive. Arrival on the executive floor. Tio, the analyst she'd had rotated. Some compliance algorithm finally catching up. She built theories and knocked them down. Not once, not for a single second across that entire weekend, did her mind go to the woman in the blue uniform. The woman she had seen nearly every day for 3 weeks. The woman whose face she could not have described to a sketch artist because she had never actually looked at it. That was the blind spot doing exactly what blind spots do. On Sunday night, Renata sent Marcus her final written report, 49 pages, and at the bottom of it she did something she had been debating for days. She added a recommendation section. Not about Vanessa, that decision had made itself. About everyone else. She wrote about Dorothy, who knew every name in the building. About Miguel and his drawer of granola bars. About Sam walking the garage at midnight. About the 3 people out of 30 who had helped pick coffee cups off a lobby floor. She wrote a sentence she suspected Marcus would read more than once. "You asked me to find out who these people are when nobody important is watching. Here is the answer. The people worth keeping were never on your shortlist, and most of your shortlist isn't worth keeping." Marcus read the report twice, alone in his study, and then sat for a long time with the lights off. Monday arrived cold and clear. Renata clocked in at 6:15, same as always. She mopped the lobby where the trash had fallen. At 7:40, Carol Jiang arrived carrying 2 locked briefcases. At 8:10, the firm's outside counsel, 2 attorneys Vanessa had never met, signed in at Dorothy's desk under names that appeared on no calendar. At 8:30, an all-hands meeting invitation hit every inbox in client services. Mandatory. 10:00 a.m. main conference floor. Office of the chairman. Renata was emptying a wastebasket on the 8th floor when Vanessa read it. She watched, in the reflection of the window glass, as the director of client services stared at her screen with a stillness that wasn't calm at all. The stillness of an animal that has just heard the click of a trap and doesn't yet know where it is. Vanessa looked up, scanning the floor for reassurance. Her eyes passed straight over the janitor. One last time. The main conference floor held 200 people, and by 9:55 it was full in the way rooms are only full when nobody knows why they're there. Client services filled the front rows. Department heads lined the walls. Someone had propped the doors open to fit the overflow, and the sound in the room was that low, nervous churn of 200 professionals texting each other the same question and getting no answer. Vanessa Cole sat in the second row, wearing her best suit, the charcoal one, the boardroom one, because whatever this was, she intended to look like the future of the company while it happened. She had spent the morning rehearsing composure. Audit questions. Committee decisions, Gerald's memory, plausible process. A succession announcement. Gracious surprise, humble acceptance. She had an expression prepared for every version of the next hour except the one that was coming. At 10:00 exactly, Marcus Hale walked in. He walked slowly because he had to, but he walked alone, no assistant, no cane, and the room rose to its feet in a wave. He let the applause happen, not because he wanted it, but because it bought him time to reach the front. Behind him came Carol Jiang with her briefcases, the two unfamiliar attorneys and the firm's head of HR, whose face had the gray, sealed look of someone who had learned everything an hour ago and was still metabolizing it. Marcus did not stand at the podium. He stood in front of it. 40 years ago, he began, I started this company with one desk, one phone, and a rule I stole from a diner owner in Asheville, because I was too young to have rules of my own. The rule was this: watch how a man treats the dishwasher, because that's how he'll treat you the day you're no longer useful. He let his eyes move across the room. I built the first 10 years of this firm on that rule. Somewhere in the last 10, I stopped checking whether we still followed it. The room was silent now, the churn gone. 5 weeks ago, I hired someone to check for me. Renata heard those words from the back of the room, standing beside her cart near the service doors, exactly where a janitor would stand during an all-hands meeting, present, peripheral, unregistered. Her heart was steady. She had rehearsed nothing. For the past 31 days, Marcus said, a member of my personal staff has worked inside this building on the cleaning crew, reporting directly to me. Not to catch you breaking rules. I expected some of that. Every company has it. I wanted to know something simpler. He paused. I wanted to know who you are when you think no one important is in the room. 200 people began at slightly different speeds to review a month of their own behavior. It moved through the crowd visibly like weather, faces going carefully blank, eyes dropping, a hand rising slowly to a mouth in the fourth row. In the second row, Vanessa Cole had stopped breathing. She was not thinking about trash cans yet. She was thinking about hallways, break rooms, elevators, doing frantic archaeology on every sentence she had spoken in 31 days, and the excavation kept turning up bones. Some of what came back, Marcus continued, made me proud. 3 names in particular, people who showed this company's character when they had nothing to gain and no idea anyone was watching. Dorothy Mills, Miguel Herrera, Sam Ackhaffer. Stand up, please, confusion. Then slowly, a receptionist, a loading dock manager, and a night security guard, the last 2 summoned to a meeting they didn't understand, rose in different corners of the room while 200 consultants stared. Effective this morning, the firm has established an annual Staff Excellence Award carrying a bonus of $25,000. These are its first 3 recipients. They were chosen based on the only performance review I have ever fully trusted. He nodded to them. Thank you. Sit down before HR faints. A ripple of laughter, thin and grateful, the room reaching for any exit from its own tension. Marcus let it die. And then, he said, there is the rest of the report. He turned for the first time and looked directly at the second row. Before we continue, I want to introduce the author. Most of you have seen her every day for a month. I'd wager not 10 of you know her name. He raised his eyes to the back of the room. Renata, would you join me, please? 200 heads turned, and a woman in a blue uniform stepped away from her cart. The walk from the service doors to the front of that room was 90 feet, and Renata made it last. She did not hurry, and she did not look down. She walked the way she had walked into board retreats and senators' offices, spine straight, chin level, and the effect on the room was chemical. 200 people watched a janitor cross the floor, and somewhere in those 90 feet, nobody could have said exactly where, she stopped being a janitor in front of their eyes. The uniform didn't change. The woman inside it simply stopped performing invisibility, and the difference was so stark that people would describe it for years afterward and never quite capture it. She passed the second row. She did not look at Vanessa. That was deliberate, and it was surgical. Being looked at, Vanessa could have survived. Being passed again, still, even now, was the beginning of the vertigo. Marcus waited until Renata stood beside him. Next to the podium, chairman and cleaner, the same 40 feet Renata had watched him from on Friday, collapsed to nothing. Renata Alves, Marcus said, has been with me for 16 years. She holds a law degree from Georgetown. She served as my chief of staff for 6 years and as head of internal operations for 7. She has represented this firm in rooms most of you will never enter. He paused. For the last 31 days, she has emptied your waste baskets, she has mopped your lobby, and she has written the most important document this company has produced in a decade. Carol Jiang opened the first briefcase. We'll start, Marcus said. with the money. What followed took 11 minutes, and the room aged years. Carol laid it out with an auditor's affectless precision. 12 invoices, 3 fiscal years, $411,000. A vendor named Meridian Data Partners with no approved supplier record, no competitive bids, no deliverables on file, and a managing partner whose relationship to a senior member of client services had been confirmed by outside counsel that morning. She never said the name. She didn't need to. Every invoice on the screen carried the same approving signature, and by the fourth slide, 200 pairs of eyes had found the second row, and the second row had become the loneliest place in North Carolina. Vanessa Cole did what brilliant people do when the ground disappears. She went to war with reality in real time. Renata watched the stages move across her face like weather fronts. The composure held for 2 slides. Then came the calculation, Gerald, committee language, plausible process, and Renata watched it die when the 6th slide showed the email chain Carol had pulled from the archive. The one where Vanessa instructed a junior coordinator to route the Meridian invoices directly to my approval queue, not through vendor management. Then briefly, absurdly, the boardroom smile deployed by pure muscle memory at the worst possible moment, flickering on and off like a light with a bad wire. And then nothing. The face just stopped. Renata had seen that stillness once before in a deposition years ago, the stillness of a person listening to their own life change tense. "Ms. Cole," Marcus said, and his voice was neither cruel nor kind. It was the voice of a man reading a verdict he had checked 3 times. "You'll meet with counsel and HR immediately following this meeting. Your system access was suspended 20 minutes ago." He looked at her for a long moment. "I want you to understand something. The money is why the lawyers are here. It is not why you're finished." He turned to the room. On the morning of the 19th, in the lobby of this building, the director of client services emptied a trash can onto a floor that a member of the cleaning staff had just finished mopping. She did it deliberately. She did it as a performance, and roughly 30 employees of this firm stood in that lobby and laughed. He let the silence do its work. "I've seen the footage. Security cameras cover that lobby, and I have spent more time with that 40-second clip than with any financial document Carol showed me. Because the invoices told me one person was a thief. The lobby told me what my company had become." Somewhere in the middle rows, a man Renata recognized, slicked hair, expensive watch, front and center in the laughing crowd that morning, had gone the color of paper. "Which brings us," Marcus said, "to the rest of you." For a moment, nobody in that room breathed. The title of the meeting invitation had said mandatory, and 200 people were now discovering what the word had been hiding. Marcus let the silence stretch until it hurt. Then he nodded to Carol, and the screen behind him changed to a single freeze frame. The lobby, 8:42 a.m., day 19. The trash mid-fall. The woman in blue standing over her mop. And around her, caught with the terrible honesty of security footage, a crescent of laughing faces in tailored clothes, every one of them sharp enough to be identified from the back row. "I'm not going to play it," Marcus said. "The people in this frame know who they are. So Counsel has spent the weekend reviewing it along with 31 days of documented conduct, not gossip, not impressions. Documented conduct." He took one step forward. "Here is what happens now. Every person visible participating in that incident will meet with HR this week, individually. Some of you will be terminated for cause. The senior manager who planned it with Ms. Cole, and it was planned. That conversation happened in the 8th floor kitchen the day before, and it was witnessed, cleaned out his desk an hour ago." A sound moved through the room, involuntary, like wind through a field. "Others in that frame will keep their jobs and lose their bonuses, their promotion eligibility for the next cycle, and any illusion that this firm doesn't notice. What you will each be told in that meeting is exactly what you did and exactly what it cost you, because that's the courtesy none of you extended to her." The man with the slicked hair had his eyes closed now. "2 department heads," Marcus continued, "are also leaving us this week, one for expense fraud, one for presenting a junior analyst's work as his own. Those matters are between them, HR, and in one case the lawyers. I mention them for one reason only, so that everyone in this room understands the review was real, it was thorough, and it was fair. Nobody is being punished for failing to be perfect. People are being held accountable for who they chose to be repeatedly when they believed there was no cost. He paused, and his voice dropped, and somehow that made it carry further. I know what some of you are thinking. You're auditing yourselves right now, wondering what she saw, what she heard, whether you're in that file. Good. Sit with that feeling. That feeling is the entire lesson. You are all brilliant people, we don't hire any other kind, and you have spent a month demonstrating that brilliance and character are different departments. He looked slowly across the room. The ones with both have nothing to fear from me. They never did. Then Marcus turned to Renata, and his tone changed key. One more piece of business. As most of you know, I'm stepping down. The board has spent 6 months reviewing candidates to succeed me, and this morning I informed them that their leading candidate is unavailable, owing to termination. Not a single person laughed. The board will run a proper process, and it will take months, and it should. But effective today, the firm has a new chief executive on an interim basis, someone who knows this company from the boardroom to the loading dock, in the most literal sense in corporate history. It took the room a full 3 seconds. Renata watched 200 faces perform the arithmetic, watched confusion become disbelief, become a slow, dawning, almost frightened comprehension, and she permitted herself, for the first time in 31 days, the small private smile she had been saving. You emptied our trash, someone in the 5th row said, not quite a question, not quite under his breath. I did, Renata said. Her first words to the room, and they landed like a gavel. Your floor recycles less than any floor in the building, by the way. We'll be addressing that too. The laughter that followed was real, startled, relieved, human, and it broke something open in the room. Marcus stepped back quietly, the way he had been planning to for months, and watched a woman in a janitor's uniform take the podium of a 9-figure firm. Renata looked out at them and did not reach for notes because there were none. 31 days ago, I walked into this building and disappeared, she began. Let me tell you what the invisible see. The room went still in a new way, not the stillness of fear this time, but of attention. The invisible see everything, Renata said. That's the first thing. Not because we're spying, I was, but that's not the point, but because you stop editing yourselves around us. In 31 days, I learned more about this company from hallways and break rooms than 16 years of board meetings ever taught me. I watched a man delete an analyst's name from her own work without breaking stride. I watched an intern get humiliated for arriving wet from the rain she drove through for you. And I watched a 24-year-old get removed from an account for the crime of being right. In the 4th row, Tio looked up like he'd been struck. But I also watched a receptionist with arthritis in both knees cross a marble lobby to pick trash off the floor while 30 of you laughed. I watched a security guard walk the garage at midnight so your youngest employees would be safe. I watched a man at the loading dock feed delivery drivers who skipped lunch to keep your packages on time. Nobody told them to. Nothing was in it for them. That she let the word hang is the actual company. The rest is just the org chart. She stepped out from behind the podium. Here's what changes. Effective this quarter, every promotion review in this firm will include input from the people below the candidate, not just above. You want the altitude. The people whose work you stand on get a voice in whether you deserve it. Second, the cleaning, security, and facility staff move from contract agencies to direct employment, with benefits by end of year. If they're good enough to hold our secrets, and believe me, they hold all of them, they're good enough to hold our health insurance. A beat. Third, the next person who treats a uniform like a verdict on a human being will be invited to explain it to a CEO who owns one. She looked at her watch, a habit 16 years old. That's all. HR meetings begin at 1. The rest of you have clients. Go be brilliant. And on your way out, the woman at the front desk is named Dorothy. She's known your names for years. Learn hers. The room emptied slowly, quietly, 200 people filing past reception, and Dorothy Mills heard her own name spoken more times in 10 minutes than in the previous 10 years. Vanessa Cole left the building at 12:50 through the parking garage, flanked by an attorney, carrying a box she'd been permitted to pack under supervision. The firm recovered the Meridian money through a civil settlement that took 8 months. The criminal referral was quietly resolved with restitution and a bar on financial industry employment. Renata approved the settlement terms herself. She was asked once by a board member whether she took satisfaction in it. She thought about the lobby, the laughter, the coffee cups at her feet, and gave the only answer that was true. Satisfaction was never the assignment. Gerald resigned before his HR meeting. Tio was restored to his account with a promotion and, at Renata's insistence, a formal note in his file commending him for flagging the original error. Priya, the intern, was hired full-time. On her first day, she found a pack of paper towels on her desk with a note that said, "The rain was never your fault." R. Marcus Hale lived 22 more months, longer than the doctors promised, long enough to watch the board vote unanimously to remove the word interim from Renata's title. He attended her installation in a wheelchair in the same conference room, and when someone offered to move him to the front, he waved them off and sat in the back by the service doors. "Best view in the house," he said. "You see everything from back here." He was buried on a Tuesday. Renata gave the eulogy. She told the diner story, the dishwasher rule, and then she told 200 mourners what she had never told anyone. That on her first day undercover, terrified her cover would break, she had asked Marcus what to do if someone finally recognized her. And Marcus had laughed and said, "Renata, you're going to learn the saddest thing about that building. Nobody looks at the person holding the mop. Nobody looks. But someone is always watching. Remember that the next time a uniform passes you in a hallway. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs the reminder. Leave a comment telling us about the invisible person who deserves to be seen at your workplace, and subscribe so you never miss a story where the overlooked finally get their due. Because somewhere out there right now, someone is being mocked for holding a mop, and you never know who they report to.